Hi, welcome. This is Chris Petri. Great to have you coming by. We're actually going to create two beautiful compositions here quickly, efficiently. We're going to talk about loosening up with your watercolors. I know this has been a common question a lot of people have all through my years of being on YouTube teaching here. I always know people are always interested in Chris. They say, how can I loosen up my paintings? How can I paint more loosely? And I know all of you probably do have a good sense of looseness to your paintings, because that's kind of how I work a lot. And I know many of you are really doing a great job out there painting along with me and making tons of progress. I talk to a lot of you on the emails, on the comments section as well. And many of you have sent in your paintings to me over the years now. So I know many people are having great success with their paintings. But this is just like a general idea of, if we want to kind of get a little more loose with our paintings, it's always a simple way to do it is take some smaller compositions like this and work at a really fast pace, pick up the pace and tempo quite a bit when we're painting, drawing and painting. Set up a little bit of a timer, maybe an egg timer or a wristwatch we set up along our table, or a small clock or alarm clock, set it up on our table, and then we just kind of say to ourselves, we're only going to take 10 minutes or 15 minutes to do the drawing, and then only 15 minutes to do the painting. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to actually time ourselves, and you'll see how it all works as we go here. But pretty much we're just going to have a fun time enjoying ourselves, trying to paint a little quicker, a faster tempo, drawing and painting with our watercolor compositions here. And we're just doing a still life and then sort of like a landscape painting with a beautiful shack here on the left hand side and some nice trees and a purple mountain in the background. So let's get together here for the next hour or so, and we'll create these two wonderful compositions. Okay, let's get started. All right, so let's get started. We just saw the finished paintings. We're doing a loosening up project here on this video. We're going to try to take our pace and our tempo for our drawings and our paintings, and we'll go a little faster. We won't get as much involved in all of the very, very fine details of things. We're going to try to just get a basic, good pencil drawing, contour drawing, and then apply the paint to it and just have a fun time with it and not get too critical about our techniques right now and the real fine details of our techniques. We just kind of want to move at a faster pace and try to get as much as we can completed the way we would like to. We kind of know our basic fundamentals. We want to get good colors, mix good colors on our palette, and get the darks and the lights correct, the tonal values correct, the shadows, where the light's coming from. So we'll do all these things as we go, but we do want to make a little bit of a note here to ourselves. Let's go at a little faster pace, because I think if we can pick up the pace a little quicker sometimes, that'll help us move through a painting faster, and we won't get too much worried about things as we're painting. Sometimes I know we get started and we start creating our painting, we get the drawing done. That's usually a good part of the work, the heavy lifting, so to speak, when we're doing a painting. And then we get into the painting portion, we're getting in the paints, we're mixing the colors, and then at that point, sometimes if we're working a long time, let's say 2 or 3 hours, that can sometimes be a little, if it's a large painting, let's say, but we're going to do smaller compositions like this, and that's going to help us a lot. So this whole effort is a smaller thumbnail size, composition, kind of smaller, like maybe a 5x7 here or a 5x5 paper. We'll use our printed photographs of your favorite subject matter, so you can use your own subject matter, or you can use this in this video that we're using here. This happens to be just a still life table I have set up across from me in my studio, so I just took a picture of that. A small vase of flowers, a shorebird, and a couple pieces of fruit and vegetables, a tomato, lemon, and an apple. And we'll put that into our composition here. So we'll get started on this composition. The first thing we usually do is, the only things we'll really need is our paints. And this happens to be the paint that I just removed. I removed the inside of this Schmincke palette right here. I removed the pans from this palette and just pulled them out, and then double stick taped them to a larger pan here so that I have a little more mixing room, and it's a little bit better on video. So that's just the only thing I did different. And so all we need really is a pencil. I'm using a number 0.07 or 0.7 Pentel mechanical pencil, and then I use here either a number 5 Da Vinci travel brush, which is a synthetic, or a number 4 travel brush, which is actually a sable brush, Kolinsky sable. Both are made by Da Vinci. One is synthetic, one is sable, natural hair. Both work great. We'll use both of these, and I don't think we'll need any other brushes other than like a number 4 or 5 round brush. And there's other brushes you can use too. Any brush is really fine that you have that's a round brush that's about this size, a number 4, number 5 or so. And that's about it. So I'll just do a quick outline here around the tape. And then I'm going to put my light insignia up here on my tape. So the light's coming from here, from this side here. And then the first thing I'll do is a preliminary sketch before I do my contour drawing. So my preliminary sketch is just to kind of start getting the feel of where everything's going to be. So I'll start out and kind of see that the vase is right about in the center. You probably won't see this preliminary sketch too well on the video because of the light. I wish I'll go over with a darker pencil drawing in a second, but I just want to kind of get the idea of where everything's going to kind of be in the like this. And then I'm going to take and put my shorebird there. Like this. And then we have the tomato here. So I'm just trying to get the overall idea of everything. Lemon. Then we have the apple over here. Like that. And then we have our table going across here. And we have our tablecloth here with some stripes. That. And then we have our flowers. I'm just going to try to get the kind of the outline of the flower arrangement here. Like this. And there's some stems in the mason jar. So this is a mason jar here for the vase. And that's pretty good. That's a super light preliminary sketch. So what I'm going to do now is take a quick break, come back, we'll do a dark pencil line using this as our basic kind of like blueprint for our contour drawing. So again, the reason I did this super light sketch first is if something isn't exactly correct or in the right spot in my area of my rectangle, I can always take a kneaded eraser and erase a few things if I have to. If I want to change something, I might want to make this over here. I want to make that leaf form a little bit further over that way. So you can erase a few things, make a few adjustments. Maybe this needs to be a little bit higher up here. Like that. I think that's better. That looks more the way the photograph is looking. Okay, so there we have it pretty much set with our light preliminary sketch. Now, if you find that you don't want to go over with a darker pencil line on top of your preliminary sketch, that's fine, and you can just start right in with the painting. But I am just going to do the darker pencil line in the final contour drawing over the top of my preliminary sketch because that's really my process. But again, I like darker pencil lines in my watercolor paintings. You might not, you're the artist, you're going to decide, maybe I don't like darker pencil lines in my watercolors. I don't really want to see the pencil lines. That's fine. You're the artist. Again, you choose how your paintings are going to look and all the, details of that. I'm just showing you kind of like my preferences, but, you're going to paint things your way. It's your paintings. It's your art, and you'll always do things according to what you want to do as far as your style and the look and the finish of your paintings. So again, I'll just take a quick break now, and then we'll come right back, do a quick darker contour drawing over the top of our preliminary sketch, And then once we do that, we'll be ready to paint. So we're going to, again, move at a good pace here. So I'll just set this down for a second, take a quick break for 5 minutes, and then come right back. All right, so let's get started with our contour drawing now. I'll set my brushes aside over here. And I think I'll spritz the paint just a little bit before we're going to be painting in maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So, or 10 minutes, hopefully. We're going to move through this quickly again, the drawing. So I just like to spray the spritz with the spritzer bottle, spray the paints a little bit, just get them activated. That'll work, and slowly moisten up the paints as the next 5 or 10 minutes go by. And I'm going to take my pencil again. We'll do our contour drawing now. So I'll basically start where the vase is, the mason jar, and I'll start doing the darker pencil drawing. And as you can see, I'm doing my shorebird first here. And I'm basically kind of just tracing over the lines that I created with the preliminary sketch. And you could make adjustments if you need to as you do this. And I'll do a few more details as I go. For the tomato, I'm going to add in the small leaves and stem on the tomato there. And the mason jar, I'm going to keep working here. I'm going to work over to the lemon, like so. Then we're going to work on the apple here. And again, if you see that you want to make a few adjustments with your apple or your lemon or anything like that, you just do it as you do your contour drawing. That's your final drawing. And I'm just going to try to move along here at a good pace. And I'm doing the leaf forms here. I'll finish up my shorebird here. And I'll work over here on some of these flowers. There's some carnations here. And some wildflowers in this vase. And again, just working, looking at so I'm constantly, if you can imagine, I'm looking back and forth all the time as I'm doing my contour drawing. And I also have the preliminary sketch underneath my contour drawing that I'm doing right now, which gives me the basic drawing, so that I'm not going to be going far from those first light sketches I put in. I'm going to kind of use those as my first, that's my base of where I want to keep everything accurate to. But then as I need to, if I need to add further details, I can do more than what that preliminary sketch is. So if you can imagine, the preliminary sketch is basically your rock solid sketch that you have done, where everything's in just the right spot, the way you like it. And then when you're doing your contour drawing, you can get more details even further beyond your preliminary sketch. And that's kind of what's the great genius of preliminary sketching and contour drawing, is you can get really a lot of great details with your paintings, your drawings and your paintings. And that is really what we're after. So that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to get my background here. That's the table, the back of the table, and then we have the backdrop up over here. There's like a white foam board back here for the backdrop. And we have some stems here in the vase. Like that. And that's about it. So we are ready to paint. We have our contour drawing completed. And let's, again, go with the up tempo. We're going to try to move at a little quicker pace, not get too much worried about every detail. Just let's get the basics in, and then we're ready to paint. And I just have a couple of shadows here that I'm going to put in. Underneath the tomato, lemon, and apple, there's a shadow coming from the light over in this direction. This way, the light is up here. I always make my light insignia when I'm drawing and in my paintings, so that I always know where the light is, where the source of the light is coming from. And I try to set up that little spotlight icon in my painting here on my tape, actually my tape border. You could put it on the paper too if you want. And we're going to go out of the painting with some of our leaf forms, like that. And then we do have some tablecloth details here, some lines on our tablecloth. Like this. And if I don't see one over here, I'm just going to add one in like that. And I'll also add this stripe going across this way. And maybe another one here. Like that. Okay, good. Let's take another quick 2-minute break. Again, we're trying to move quickly here. And we'll get our paints. Our paints are already kind of prepped. Add a little more water to these, just a touch more. And then we'll have some, and again, we're going to go with a quicker painting here. We're not going to get as, we're not going to spend as much time as we might normally spend on our painting portion here. We're going to kind of go fast, have fun with this, make it kind of like a fun, quicker tempo composition without maybe spending 2 or 3 hours. Let's just spend like the next 20 minutes painting this. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a time frame to do it in. 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes is all we're going to put into this now for our painting. So if you want to set up a little egg timer for yourself, or put your wristwatch or something on your table and say, okay, I have the next 20 minutes to complete this, or 15, 20 minutes to complete this painting. Let me stick to it. And if you see the time is starting to go quickly, you got to just pick up your pace to make sure that you get it all done. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself about 15 minutes to do this, and then we'll see how it turns out. So I'll be right back. All right, let's see how we can make out here in 15 minutes. So I have a water container, a little bit of water we put in here, fresh clean water. I'll set that over to my right side. And again, I have just basically 2 brushes I'll use. These are number 4 Sable travel brush by Da Vinci, and then a Da Vinci number 5 synthetic travel brush. And these are both round brushes. And they have good points on them still. And let's get started right away. First thing I always mention is what type of method or technique are we going to use to paint this. Here we're going to use the alla prima method or technique, which is painting this all at one time. So we're not going to really do any glazes and let things dry and so forth. We're just going to go right in, start painting, and the thing we'll do is we'll start with our darker tonal values first. So whatever we see is the darks, mostly the darker green leaf forms. The shorebird is quite dark with the stand. And then you have your medium tonal values, your tomato, lemon, and apple are sort of, and there's a pepper there I forgot to put in here, so I just want to make sure I put this pepper in. So I have my pepper here. Okay, so that's a red chili pepper, like that. And that's kind of dark too. So our darks, we're going to kind of get those started first. So let's, I'll take some fresh clean water, get my brush damp. I always usually have a tissue or a paper towel where I can dry off some of the water on the paper towel or brush. or a paper towel or tissue. I don't want to have a waterlogged, flooding brush when I'm going in to get my paints. I want to have a damp brush, maybe at most, when I go in to get my paints. And then let's get our green. We'll start mixing some greens, a little bit of blue, and so some French ultramarine blue and some kind of like that light red kind of color, and the green, and then a little bit of the yellow ochre type of look there. So we're getting some mixes of greens. And what else can we use? A little bit of more yellow ochre to make this a little bit more, some lighter green, darker green. And let's get right in and we'll just start working on our, and again, I'm going to move quicker. I'm not going to sort of and I'm just going to constantly be referring back and forth. I'm going to look at my photograph, put in some information, look back there at my photograph again, more information, going in with the darks. Trying to get some good mixes of colors. For my greens, I don't want to have my greens sort of just looking one color. I want to mix the colors. Here we have another bit of green up here. So as you can see, I'm working, and again, I'm working quicker, faster pace, and that's what I want. Let us do this. Let's just get in there and get this painting started and get the darks going. Move your brush quickly. You know, load up your brush with a good amount of paint. We always remember we leave lots of white paper inside the bouquet so that we could see through the bouquet. We don't want to have everything packed in there like all kinds of colors and flowers, and we want to have some areas of like, so that it feels like light and airy, like there's, you can see through it, like kind of like a lattice, so you can see through your bouquet. So if you have to add a few areas where you can see through it, do that. Add some of that. So you'll delete out some information if you have to, so that you make sure you don't paint the whole bouquet with colors and flowers and leaf forms, and you forget to leave some of that light airiness to it. All right, so we've got a lot of good darks in here already. We've kind of off to a good start. We have some of our finer stems and things like this going pretty good, like this. And a couple of quick brush strokes, and then we're right over here, starting down here. Let's get some of this dark leaf form in there, like that. And maybe we'll save some of the finer details of the darks. Maybe we'll go in and do some of these stems in the vase, like this. Pick up some more paint, and again, we're not going to take too much time. We're not going to take too much time. We're going to get our shorebird started. I might have to add a little bit of water here. The shorebird is lighter on top because the light's coming from here, so we want to make sure that we kind of capture that. So our shorebird is darker underneath here. Let that let's let that paint sit there for a few seconds. We'll take a little bit of darker, a little bit of black, add a little bit of black for the beak, and that should be good there. Okay, now that paint is starting to dry a little bit, now we can take a damp brush and dampen up this area here. I'm looking to make sure I'm looking at my stopwatch. I have a stopwatch for 15 minutes, so I'm going to start moving a little quicker now. Okay, so that's our shorebird there. And it's lighter, the bird is lighter on top. His feathers are lighter up top, you can see that. And then underneath it's quite light, so I'm just going to let that maybe put a little bit of color there. Good. Go in with a darker dark. And don't worry about the color so much. We're just looking for the darks and lights. If your darks are, as long as it's dark, you're going to be good. Okay, so we have that all set. I think we're good right now for the darks. Now we can start working in our red for our tomato. Let's get a little bit of color for our tomato. And again, I'm just going to go quickly. I'm not going to be fussing too much here. Let's just get this. There's a bit of a highlight on the tomato there. Like that. It's a little bit darker on the front here, so I'll just put a tiny bit of darker dark there. And then I'm going to go in with some yellow ochre and just do a little bit of a shadow. All right, I have like 5 minutes to go, so you're going to see me really go quick now. I did say I was going to do this in 15 minutes, so I'm going to stick with that. So now I'm just going to really pick up the pace here. And it doesn't hurt to go really quick like this. There's a bit of a shadow over here on this lemon from the bird, the shorebird. So we'll leave that shadow there. Green apple. A little bit of yellow and green. Okay. I might sacrifice a little bit of I have 5 minutes left, or about 5 minutes. If I stretch it maybe a little more. I'm just going to add that shadowing like that. Chili pepper. Okay. Then I'm going to use a little bit of shadowing here. Mix up a little bit of gray. And I'm just going to put in a little bit of these flower petals, just very lightly. I can't. Blue, a little bit of blue. Okay, I don't have much time. A little bit of yellow. There's some yellow in there. In the flowers. So I will add some of that yellow. Okay, and again, let's just keep working quickly. Maybe a few more darks here and there. I think that looks good. Okay, now what we have left is some of this darker dark on top of this here, but not super dark. If you have to lift up a little bit of paint with your tissue or paper towel, you can do that. All right, so we have a little bit of light on the top of that pedestal. Then we're going to go with a green stripe here. Like that. A yellow stripe over here. Right across, like that. This. And that other stripe is blue. Okay, and then that's a little bit of a red stripe there. I'll maybe change that to maybe I'll go with the red, I guess. That's the color of the stripe. I'm just going to leave it that way. Okay. And this is blue. Okay, we have another stripe there. All right, we're doing good on time. There is a bit of a shadow there from the shorebird, like that. I'll make a little bit of a gray mixture like this. There's some gray shadow on the wall over here. Okay, and I'll just do a little bit of splashing. A couple of splashes with some grayish color maybe too. Some blue. Blue is always good. Most people enjoy the color blue. If the splashes don't come out great, or you think it's too many, you just lift them up. You can actually lift up your splashes really easily, like that, by just tapping them with a tissue or a paper towel, and you can even give it a little twist, like that, and it works fine. We'll get a little bit of shadow along the back of this table here, and I'll just mix all the colors that I have in the palette for that shadow on the wall. That gives us a little bit of kind of a color change here. And if I put some of that green over there, I'll put some here, maybe a little bit there. I would kind of mix that in and around a little bit here and there. I try to always do that and mix the colors around to harmonize all the colors. All right, so that's, like I said, having fun and moving very quickly. And you can see how you can get a good result by going quickly. And I'm just trying to emphasize that where the wall meets the tabletop, our table. And then I'll just lift that up a little bit into the background. And that is it. So, I hope you enjoyed this composition where we're kind of moving at a faster pace. Push yourself to go quickly, as quick as you can go. And if it gets a little bit messy or a little bit, maybe you don't have as many details as you would like, but that's okay. You're sort of training yourself to go at a little quicker pace and not get too worried about every detail as you're going. Let some of those details go and enjoy the kind of the quicker pace, more spontaneity, a little more fun things happening here and there that you didn't expect maybe will happen. And we could just add a few leaf forms there. I'm going to put this there like that. Maybe just a quick, so I'm going to just try to do a quick view And then if anything starts to, but again, that's it now. I'm really putting down the brushes and the paints. Okay, and we'll maybe sign this one here. Okay, sign your paintings, and we'll start another painting in just a minute. So we'll do two in this video, two really quick paste compositions. Hope you enjoyed this first one. It's a still life with flowers, shorebird, and some fruit. And we'll get started on our next one in just a second. All right, so let's start prepping for our next painting. I'll just lift up my reference photograph here, and I'll set that aside in a folder, and we'll save it for another painting sometime in the future, maybe. And then we'll peel up our tape here. Okay, that's our finished painting. Composition number one. All right, let's get started on the second one. I'm going to go quickly across the studio, get some more paper. I'll be right back. All right, so we have some paper, another sheet of paper. Let's see what we have here. I was thinking this is about 5 by 6, about 6 by 7.5, or 6 by 8. And then we'll use some drafting tape. Make sure I put that right there. And we'll just tape down the paper. Leaves a nice border too as well. And I usually press down. Does that make sense? I press down right along where the paper is for the most part. That's the most important part. We can even use the paintbrush, the tip of the paintbrush, and just press down really well on where the paper meets the edge of the tape. And the rest I press down too, but not as firmly, just to make sure it's all good. And then if we want to neaten things up a little bit, sometimes I'll just neaten things up, trim off the extra tape. You don't have to be this neat at home. I just try to keep things kind of neat here for the videos. Okay, we have our paper. Then we'll do our next scene. Again, we're going to be moving quickly. We're going to do sort of like a Western scene. Beautiful purple mountains in the background. A small wooden shack, small house, a little small kind of like cottage or shack there. And then some trees. We'll keep this really simple as well and fast. We're going to do this quickly. So I'll take this. I'll set it onto the surface here so we can work from our photograph. I'll put a piece of Scotch tape on here just so it doesn't move around on us. And we're ready to start. So we'll get our pencil. We'll do a preliminary sketch the same as we did before. This time the light is coming from the right side across this way. And again, first thing I'm kind of looking at, or one of the first things I usually look at in a painting if I'm working from a photograph like this, or if I'm outside, outdoors, or if I'm in my studio and I'm working from still life or anything like that, I'm always looking, where is the light coming from? One of the first things that are really important to kind of key in on, and that's what we do right there. We put our spotlight insignia, our icon, our spotlight icon, like that. And then we're ready to start. Just quickly, we're going to give ourselves maybe 10-15 minutes to do this drawing at most. Let's even try to do it in 10 minutes. we're going to look right away at the composition and say, well, where is the horizon line of the land? And that's about 1/4 of the way up from the bottom of the rectangle here, this photograph. And then about the next point here is halfway. That's where the tops of these trees are. And then another 1/4, which becomes the 3/4 point, and that's about where the tops of these trees are over here. And that's pretty much the 4 quarters that we have. Our divisions of the horizontal divisions across this are sort of those quarters. So the first quarter, 1/4, is the horizon line of the land, where the land goes across the fields and the road. Second quarter up, which is the halfway point, that's about where the trees are, the tops of the trees, and the top of the shack here, this cabin. And then 3/4 of the way up is about where the tree is over here, and sort of the tops of the mountains are right up to the top portion of our painting, the top edge. So we have that in mind now. So let's make we'll just kind of trace around the outside edge of our tape. It's kind of good to have that little visual pencil line there. And then we're going to go with our quarters. So we'll go first halfway, half point, first quarter. So you have your first quarter up, halfway point, 3/4, top. Then we can just do a light pencil line across there like that, preliminary sketch. Same as before. On the first composition, we do our preliminary sketch. And we do a little bit of trees over here, like so, and then these trees up here. And if I change things around a little bit, make things a little bit different, no big deal. Then we come over here, the hill goes up like so. Then we have some tree trunks over here, and then we say about the halfway point here is where the cabin kind of starts on this side over here. So if this is the halfway point approximately, that's where the cabin starts down here. So I'll put that here. And then I'm just going to try to lightly and I noticed that the roof of the cabin down here is far down here, almost touching the road and the grass fields here. And then this edge of the roof up here is quite a bit up higher. So that's something I key in on to make sure that my shack here is looking good. And there's some trees that are hanging over the edges of the roof, so we have that there. And then we have a cupola on top of the shack like that. And that's the preliminary sketch basically. And then we have the door over here. And now, since I have everything pretty much, I'm just going to look over here and see that there's a line here where the edge of the field is here. And then this rounds about here. And we have some fence posts here. So I'm just going to try to get some, and again, we're going to try to go quickly here, so I don't want to spend too much time. Doing too many details. So I just want to have a couple of good details in here. And the rest we're going to paint in with our brushes and our paint. And a couple of windows here on the underside of the eaves of the roof. Like this. And you might notice that I will do a contour drawing over the top of this light preliminary sketch. So let me do that. Okay, so now I'm feeling good about the preliminary sketch. Everything looks good according to our... I'm just going to do the mountain here, top, like that. A couple of seagulls here. A couple of clouds. All right, I will take a quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll do the darker contour drawing over the top of our preliminary sketch. All right, we're going to go right in and get our contour drawing completed. Our darker pencil line, so I'll start over here. And I'll get my darker pencil line here for the contour drawing. And then I notice there's the underside of the eave of the roof, the rake edge of that rooftop, and then we have our cupola. And then we have that dark doorway here. I'll put some shadow there. I'll put some shadow on these windows to make sure I remember to make those dark. There's a couple of bales of hay. There's some other bushes and things over here. I'm going to make sure to leave some light showing through there. I'm going to put some markings just to let myself know to remember to put leave some lights in there. I'll leave the mountains a little bit lighter, that pencil line for the mountains, because the mountains are purple and they're in the distance and they're light. I don't want to go with a super dark pencil line there, but we'll see that in a few as we work along with our paints. And again, we are then we're going to have our field here. There's like a road there. Okay, and then we're going to make sure we have our fence posts and some of the field posts here that are in the field. Like so. And I think that's good enough information that we have enough that we can paint. And we did want to make sure we have our birds here flying. Okay. All right, perfect. So now we're going to give ourselves another 15 minutes to paint this. 10 to 15 minutes. So let's set our timers. Once we get our paints ready, what we'll do is we'll clean up our palette. When we come back, we'll clean up our palette a little bit. We'll mix a little more paint, and we'll get started on the painting. And again, I think we can finish this in, I would say, yeah, 15 minutes should be plenty of time. All right, so we're getting back to prep for our painting. I'll take some paper towel and just maybe, I'll just wipe up a little bit of the paint here on my palette. We'll leave some of these colors here. I think we're going to use the same colors for the most part in this painting too. We're going to use a lot of the similar colors we used in the first composition. I'll just try to give ourselves a tidier palette. This way we have a little more flexibility as mixing more colors. This painting we're going to do a little different. We're going to do the glazing technique, which means we're going to actually coat the whole painting with a light wash first and then go back and then paint in the darker darks. So we're going to go in with the lights first with a light wash of all the colors here that we're seeing, the purples and some of the grayish browns and the golds and some of the blues in here and purples. We'll do that whole light wash first. Then we'll go over the top of this once it dries 100%. We'll use a blow dryer to dry this once we're done with our first glazing. Once it's 100% dry, we'll go back in and do the darks on top. You could also let it dry naturally for a couple hours or 2-3 hours, and it might be dry enough. It just has to be dry enough to the touch so that when you go up and you touch the painting, it's dry, and that means it's ready for the second darker darks on top of that light wash. The only thing we will do different here is we'll use a larger brush. I'm going to use a number 10 to do our first wash here across the whole painting. So once we do that first light wash here with this larger brush, it's a number 10 Raphael Kolinsky Sable brush. Then we'll go back to our same brushes we used before. So we're going to we might even use something a little bit in between. So yeah, maybe we'll even use this number 8 travel brush, which is a Kolinsky Sable travel brush. So we're going to use an extra brush or two. We're going to use a large brush for these washes here for the light wash first, and then we'll use the small brush for finer details, and we'll use this medium-sized brush for maybe some of the trees and things like this. So you can almost match up your brushes with your subject matter. So you can kind of see. You could even use this brush here. So we could even use this brush for all of this, all of these details here, and then just the larger brush to get the first glazing on the paper. So let's do that. All right, first thing I do is I have the fresh, clean water. I emptied out my bucket. Made sure I have fresh, clean water to start with this painting. We're using, again, the glazing method, the glazing technique. First thing I do is I just make a light bit of wash of water on top of the paper, going across the whole paper. Not too much, just dampen up the paper. That's all we need. Just like that. Dampen up the paper. Just like that. And that's all we need to do. Dampen the paper with fresh, clean water. And then we just let it sit there for a second or two. And then we come over here. And we say to ourselves, let's make these light washes first. So we'll come down here and make some of these lighter washes. For the sky and the mountains. So for the sky, we're going to leave this... actually, the sky is sort of a grayish color, so we'll use this for the sky, and we can even just start putting that in right now, this color here for the sky, which is just like a light grayish color, which is kind of a mix of all these colors. Looks kind of like, some blue, some red, some green, and I'll take some blue, start putting a little bit of blue in there too, and then I'll take those same colors and just put them right down into the rest of the painting. And that's pretty much your first light wash for the most part. And then you could, if you want, take a little bit of the red here and make a little bit of a purple, which would be red and blue. A little more blue, I think. So that has a little more of a bluish purple to it. Not quite as purple as I thought it was, actually, when I'm looking at it. And I'll take a little bit of that muddy color there, a little bit of that yellow and red. And we'll just do that. And then we could add more later. But let's get some of that purple in there to start with. Like that. It can go right down over the trees, no big deal. The trees are going to be a lot darker, so if you go over with a lighter color, you'll be okay. And I think that's fine. And again, usually we say we make things a little bit darker because they lighten up with watercolor. Does that make sense? When you work with watercolors, you always realize it gets a little bit lighter when it dries. So you go a little bit darker to start with, and then it'll lighten up a bit. About half as much as you're seeing it right now. It's going to probably dry half as light, that purple color we're putting in right here. Okay, so now we have those purple mountains in there. Again, we're trying to give ourselves about 15 minutes to do this. And I kind of looked at my watch over there, and I see I'm about 5 minutes already. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here, but I just pick up a little bit of that color there, just to give it a little bit of that misty kind of look. Maybe a little more of that grayish color there. That. All right. I will try to lift up a little bit of the wash over here to try to keep this nice and bright, this light here. So I'm going to lift up some of that wash I painted over that section there on that on our shed, our shack. Okay, and it is quite lighter up here, so don't be afraid to go in and take some paper towel or tissue, lighten up a couple spots. If you go in and you look and you start looking back at your photograph and you say, oh, wait a minute, it's a little bit lighter up here than I kind of painted it, well, you still have time. You can lift up a little bit of, you have some time to lift up a little bit of the paint there, lift that up, and you're pretty good, I think. Then we just maybe fill in that one spot there. We lifted up a little too much. There we go. Okay, let's let this dry 100%, and then we'll come back and put in our secondary washes. We could even, let's just even start to put in a little bit of our other colors that we kind of we're starting to look and see here. We can start doing this here. The paper is damp, but we can still do this, and we can mix these colors. That's fine if we mix up some of these colors like this. So we can put this all as gold. We'll put some more gold up here, some more up here. So we're going to start to mix the same colors around the painting. So let's get that gold color mixing around the painting, right into the trees, like that. Even on the building. And again, we have plenty of time now to work because the paper's damp. And again, you can lift up some more paint if you see some of those edges are flowing. That's the only thing when you work with really wet paper like we're doing, and we would have been better off letting it dry 100% before. But you can also go for the gusto and start to work when it's still damp, the paper, because you do get some beautiful mixing of colors, and it can be really fun to work with the paper when it's sort of still a little bit damp. But that, I think, is good. Okay. Now I'm going to say at this point I'm going to let this dry now 100%. I'm going to use a blow dryer, so I'm going to take 5 minutes and blow dry this off, and we'll come right back. All right, so now we use the blow dryer. We maybe for about 2 or 3 minutes we applied some warm air onto our paper, and now it's dry to the touch. It's perfectly ready for now our second coat of glazing. So what I'll do is I'll shift down to this medium-sized brush, which is a number 8, Clancy Sable Travel brush, and then we'll just mix up some paint. I actually cleaned up a little bit of the paint here, so we can start out with fresh, clean colors here. So I noticed there's some purple, so that's going to be blue and red. So I'm going to mix some purple up here, like that. And then I'll rinse off my brush quickly, and then I'll dry off a little bit of the dampness of the brush on a paper towel. Then I'll start going in and getting some of that red, which is like a light red, some cadmium red, here, some light red, cadmium red, that yellow ochre. I might have to spritz my paints a little bit, just to get a little bit of moisture going there. Okay, I'm going to look here and see what I need. So blue, green, so I'm mixing all 3 greens here, and then put a little bit of red, cadmium red and gold in there. So that's going to be basically the kind of like an olivey green. And then some more reds over here. So I'm just going to try to match up the colors as I'm seeing them. There's a little bit of black. I want to get a little bit of that dark. So I'll mix in a little bit of that black or dark brown. I think it's a black here. This is like an ivory black, and you mix it in with that green, and you get a good dark. Like a dark olive green, almost like a dark brown. So that's kind of like the colors I'm seeing. There's some purples in there too that are going to kind of blend in to these colors to match up with the mountains. And again, we're not going to get too... we only have another 10 minutes now to finish up. So it took us 5 minutes to mix some colors here. Let's start getting some colors on the... I'll just do some rounding like this. And I just want to make sure I leave some white paper there in the trees. I don't want to cover the paper completely. Let me get some of the darks in here. Light's coming from here. So I'm just going to try to get the shapes I'm seeing. This is the spire of the cupola. Like that. I'm going to take some of that red, mix it around like this. Trying to kind of just look at the, I'm looking at the and then we can go right over those windows. And it's a little bit lighter there. A little bit darker over here. And again, I'm using some circular motions with my brush. And I want to leave some a little bit of purple too into some of this. And again, we only have another 5 or 10 minutes at most to work. Let's not lose sight of that we're trying to do this quickly. And now we're going with the darker colors underneath the trees. Underneath the trees are the lowest part of the tree where the light's up here high. And then you have your darker shade tonal values on your trees below. And we're leaving the darker tones underneath, like that. And try to get some of these branches coming out. Just like basically we're seeing in the picture here. And it gets a little bit lighter up here, gold. Like that. Okay, so I think we're doing pretty well here. We have plenty of... We dry off our brush here, get some of that darker wash for the tree trunks down here, like so. And then again, if we're trying to do this painting really expeditiously, we might not get every single color that we're seeing in the photograph detailed into this. So you kind of work with what you have and see how it goes. And that's basically all we can do. And then we have this dark here. Looks like a large door here on the side. Like that. Rinse off my brush, dry off the brush on paper towel or tissue. Get some of the gold and red, dry that off a little bit. We don't want too much on the brush. And we just come down here and do that little bit of shadowing underneath the eaves of the roof here. the rake edge of the roof. And I think that's good. We have a little bit of detail here. There's a little bit of detail there. Another couple bits of bracing for the roof. Okay, so now we're looking pretty good. I think the next thing we'll do is we have pretty much a lot of the details in here pretty well, and so I'm thinking we're fine. We actually are sticking to our 15 minutes, so we have another 5 minutes, so we're actually okay. We have a little more time. The next thing I'll do is get a little bit of that dark green, olivey green, maybe a little more of the green here. And we're just going to put some of that green across here. I wouldn't, sometimes you can scratch out the fence posts if you want to, quickly like that. Or we can use some white white paint later if we want to. And this is sort of a line there. And then the field, it gets a little more red here. You can kind of see there's some more red. Looks like some kind of rusty looking red there. And then maybe a little bit of cadmium red here. And then here a little more cadmium red. Just to kind of have a little bit of interesting high intensity colors a little bit here and there. What else do we have here? The roof has some, so I'm just going to use my brush and kind of, you could use a smaller brush here. I think I'd advise a smaller brush maybe, but I'll do it with this larger brush. I try to use as large as a brush as I can, like this, just like that, with maybe a little bit of that gold in there, a little bit of the red. All right, so this looks pretty good, and then we have some lines going this way. Like that, with some red in there too. And I think, like I said, you know, I'm just constantly looking back and forth at the painting, the subject matter that we have here, this photograph, this printout of a photo. So I'm just looking back and forth, and that's all we can do as we work on this. But then again, too, we did say we want to try to keep it to 15 minutes here if we can, 20 minutes. You can add some high intensity yellow here and cadmium red. And then we can leave it more subdued over here. And I wouldn't fuss too much. I might just make a little bit of a, sometimes I'll take a paper towel and fold it up and make a crease in it like this, and then to maybe capture a really good line that we might want to capture like that. And again, we have some of that green over here. And I'm just trying to get those lines looking good across there. Maybe a couple of the lines like that, radiating. And I think that's good. The only thing I would do left is maybe a little bit of that darker dark here. I twirl my brush around and get the point on the brush really, really fine like that. And then maybe we can just have our birds here. We could make them a little darker, like that. And anything else we could do here? I think we have everything looking pretty good. The black here, the black paint that we used, mixed in with some of the other colors, will get our windows for our shack here. A little bit there, and then we can do a couple of and then the wood fence posts over here. So we have a couple more fence posts here and there, but I think that's good. And we have it. We took another 15 minutes to get our paint done, our paint glazing on here, our last glazing. So I think that if anything, if we have just a couple more seconds, maybe there's another window over here, darker window, like so, and then there may be some darker darks over here. Like that. What else do we have? And we accomplished, like we said, we wanted to leave some of those lights in the trees. So we left those little bits of white paper here and there in the trees. You could also use a little touch of white paint if you wanted to do a few touch-ups here. But again, we're trying to do faster and again, quick tempo, smaller compositions to try to help ourselves to become more loose with our paintings, to become, a lot of people always do comment in the comment section, and some of you have even emailed me many times over the years. Many people, you've commented to me, many of my students and people that we are fellow artists here. We're all fellow artists, and as watercolor artists, we have questions. We always feel free to leave questions in the comments below. And but again, a lot of times people say, how can I get more loose with my paintings? I tend to be a little too tense, maybe spending too much time. The quickest way to kind of remedy that is maybe take some time out and practice for maybe a couple weeks or so and try to do some really fast tempo type compositions like this in a smaller format, or you could go even larger in your format. It depends how you like to work, but this really is helpful. It'll help you to loosen up your style and your technique for painting and watercolor, and I'm hoping that you'll check out all my information below in the comments section. You'll see that I have all of my art supplies. In case you're ever interested in purchasing art supplies, you'll know exactly what I use. And I recommend all of those things because they're the best products I've ever found and that I use on a constant basis. And I have my book, too. I have a link to my book if you want to purchase my book. And also, too, a video of my book so you can see all the pages in my book. You'll see every single page there in my book, all the paintings, so that you kind of know what you're going to be purchasing. When you purchase a book from me, you'll see all of the information I have in my book. And I'm really happy that you joined along with me. And if it's your first time here, great to have you along. Hope you'll subscribe below. Feel free to subscribe. This way you stick with us here. We're working constantly, week after week, month after month, and year after year. So we all together get better at our watercolors, and that's our main goal. We want to create more beautiful paintings on a constant basis. Okay, so we'll see you soon. Again, great painting with everybody, and enjoy the journey, okay? Bye-bye.